All right, so y'all know how much I like the X Pearl series. Looking forward to Maxxine. And y'all know I've been reacting to different things about Pearl, so on and so forth. But there's another video which I want to react to that says why you don't understand Pearl. And at first I'm like, why is this a title? But then I remember when Pearl came out, it was a mixed breed. Like some loved it, some was like, sorry. Some was like, oh, this ain't it. This ain't a good one. And personally, I used to say I don't think people fully understand the movie. But now this title says the same thing. Why you don't understand Pearl? Maybe it's some things I don't understand because I love Pearl. First shout out to Mia Goth. She should have gotten an award for that role. But two, the movie in itself made sense of why X was the way it was. And now I look forward to Maxxine to see where they're going with that, because there's a lot when it comes to this franchise that I'm looking forward that we don't know yet. How should I say it? There's a lot of questions I still have that I hope Maxxine and maybe future other projects will explain. But I'm interested in seeing why you don't understand Pearl. I'm interested in seeing if this person, this YouTube channel, what's this channel? Zudo Show. Shout out to Zudo Show. If they share anything that I don't know. Because maybe, even though I'm a huge fan, maybe there's some things I missed. But yeah, there was a mixed reception to this and X, to be real. Some people was like, X is not it. Some people was looking for X to be like a haunted house kind of movie, and I don't want to spoil too much, but it's not. It's different. It's different, but it's well put together, in my opinion, how they did that, and then Pearl, and now they're about to do Maxxine, which I'm looking forward to. So let's stop talking. Let's see what we got here.
What did I do wrong?
Nothing. Calm.
No! Why are you leaving me if I didn't do anything wrong? I don't understand. I thought you liked me!
Pearl is misunderstood. Not just the main character of A24's latest horror, but the film itself. It's not exactly the splatterfest that X was, and those who were expecting a prequel filled with more geriatric nudity and kills than the first were naturally disappointed. Instead, they were met with the deeper, more meditative character study. I saw Pearl without any real hype at all. I hadn't even seen X. So for me to come out of the theater and see the lukewarm response that it received felt criminal. I think it deserves more. And considering recent events, Pearl warrants a discussion.
Wait, what did I say? I saw Oscars, so maybe he's going to be talking about why Mia Goth didn't get an award for this?
I think it deserves more. And
why do the Oscars reject horror? Mia Goth says it's very political and a change is necessary after Pearl shut out. Yeah, I said all the time, she was robbed, regardless of how you feel about the movie, whether if you loved it or if you didn't. Mia Goth's performance, Academy Awards is about when you talk about Best Actor, Best Actress, is about the character's performance. Her performance was due to get an award. And no shade to the person, whoever won that award that year. But it's hard to believe somebody topped that. And you have to see it to know what I'm talking about. Like, even if, like I said, if you don't like the movie, that's your opinion. You don't have to like the movie. But tell me that performance. There's no way a lot of people can tell me that performance is not Oscar worthy. But, so it's interesting that somebody else pointed that out too.
Considering recent events, Pearl warrants a discussion and a little praise. Now, more than ever. Ty West's ongoing horror trilogy is first and foremost about movies. Specifically, the power that movies have over people's ambitions, their dreams, and their actions. A far cry from the behind-the-scenes grit and grime of X, Pearl focuses on the love for cinema and the glamour that surrounds it. The sweeping orchestral soundtrack that kicks off A24's Pearl instantly transports us to a simpler time for movies. The year is 1918. We follow a farm girl who lives with her overbearing mother and ill father. She dreams of becoming a star, but the Spanish flu and her mother's strict rules make life increasingly difficult. Pearl lives in desperate times. The happy moments of her life are stuck in memories and photographs. Waiting for her husband to return from war, the harsh circumstances that she finds herself in are slowly becoming permanent. When taking a closer look at Pearl's themes, there are some obvious homages to draw from here. The most notable one being The Wizard of Oz. In both, we see a poor farm girl badgered by a strict maternal figure in a bright, poppy, technicolor world. Obvious references
I didn't even think of that,
such as Pearl's mother embodying the Wicked Witch of the West, or Pearl's father serving as a Tin Man. The writers are definitely thinking about these parallels, but it's not a one-to-one thing.
I didn't deem it.
It's more of an ode to these classic archetypes and symbols from Hollywood's golden age.
But it makes sense.
Pearl also names her pets after famous actors of the time, so it's clear from the get-go that Hollywood has an influence on her, and these symbols inform her life.
it was less literally informed probably than in which you're phrasing it, but you know, it's not lost to me that we were making a sort of Technicolor inspired 1940s movie that happened to have a scarecrow. But yeah, I mean, it was really, there's a element of evoking this kind of era of filmmaking and the sort of wonder that came with that kind of filmmaking and a sort of fantasy to that, and there's a childlike nature to that or certain Disney movies of the era and things like that, and it felt like an interesting contrast for a much darker story.
Pretty early on, these bright visuals do in fact give way to a darker story. Most things in Pearl have a darker side to them, like these newsreels that are way too gory to be shown in an ordinary theater. It's prominently seen in her family dynamic. From pictures, we can see that they were once a happy family. These days, however, Pearl's mother punishes her and sees her dreams as a foolish thing. Her father is gravely sick. He has an illness that is never really explained, but is meant to represent a few things. The influenza that spreads outside their door, as well as the burden Pearl feels of being stuck at the farm. She ultimately loves her father, but due to his condition, you can feel that there's a sense of resentment lingering in some scenes. It's later revealed that Howard's enlistment was voluntary, a way to get back at his family despite hurting Pearl the most. Pearl's circumstances often take her further away from what she wants, but as she's told time and time again,
one day you'll understand that getting what you want isn't what's important. Making the most of what you have is.
The film culminates in this incredible monologue. All of Pearl's wishes and regrets are laid bare to the viewer. It really warms you to Pearl. You feel for her. All she wanted was to be loved.
Yeah,
but
as
with
crazy
her
as
father
she was,
incapacitated and her mother driven away by her murderous ways, it feels like an impossibility.
You do
Pearl's
feel for her. You feel
monologue
bad
is, of course,
for her.
one of the film's high points, but an overlooked scene in Pearl is Ruth's monologue, which is equal parts heart-wrenching as it is terrifying. In some ways, it's the inverse of Pearl's subdued monologue. They're loud, violent threats from a character who typically keeps her head down, versus the soft-spoken thoughts of a character capable of such explosive violence. The biggest parallel in the film exists between Pearl and her mother. In the film's opening moments, Pearl is caught admiring herself in her mother's dress. The music stops, the lights turn back on, and she's told to change into her work clothes. Her power and confidence are lost in this moment. She eventually ends up taking other dresses during some pivotal moments in the story where she needs her confidence back. At the film's end, after Pearl's rejection from the dance troupe, she plays the role of a poor farm girl once again. She wears her overalls, a symbol of her power lost. We come to find out that Ruth has also had a hard life. It was essentially stolen from her when her husband became ill. Due to this, Pearl's mother no longer wears those nice clothes either. Keeping this power dynamic of clothing in mind, we can see this as a symbol of her power lost and even a glimpse into Pearl's future. Delving further into this idea, when Maxxine wears the overalls, she does so without wearing anything else underneath. She's less inhibited than Pearl and was able to escape her strict environment, shifting the power dynamic of the farm girl's uniform.
Take it from me. Letting outdated traditions control how you live your life will get you nowhere.
Pearl comes to understand these similarities between her and her mother, and attempts to make amends when she visits her body in the root cellar. For a brief moment, she's alive and embracing her. She says "I love you" to her mother in German, which is the only instance of her speaking German in the film. Unfortunately, by the time she realizes this, it's far too late.
Way too late, yeah.
Food, and most notably, the dinner table, also play an important role in Pearl. The film is set in a time of great famine, yet food is abundant at Pearl's farmhouse, to the point where so much of it goes to waste. This abundance of food is thanks mostly in part to Pearl's mother. As she puts it, it's a result of how we conduct our lives. After her death, the food begins to spoil, and from this point on, there isn't a shot of food that's not discarded, smashed, or otherwise left to rot. It reminds me of the rotted out food in The Witch. In that film, the rotting corn husks were the results of an evil hex that cursed the family. That's not to say that Pearl is exactly a witch or anything, but evil certainly follows her. The film's most pivotal moments also take place around the dinner table, which is commonly seen as a place where families bond and share heart to heart.
Definitely.
Pearl even goes about trying to fix her mistakes by setting the table for a family dinner, albeit in her own tragic way. Despite the brutality, decay, and overall mayhem on display here, I still find Pearl to be a sympathetic movie with an equally sympathetic protagonist. Even on my second viewing, the emotions were palpable. I really felt for this murderous girl stuck on her farm. She tried and failed. Her character has a lot of depth, and the film really kicks off in the second half, once Pearl makes some bad decisions that are unfortunately irreversible. I feel for Pearl so much. She longs for freedom, for love, for acceptance. She desires so much that she commits these cruel acts to achieve her dream, and has met with rejection every step of the way. I'm sure everyone has known this kind of longing at some point in their lives, and unfortunately, most of us are familiar with the rejection that follows too. In essence, Pearl
Yeah.
is about the belief that you are more than who you are at this moment, which makes it even more tragic that she tries to escape her means throughout the film, but by the end, she buries this belief in herself and figures that this is where she belongs. But Pearl was misunderstood, and she deserved more.
You're a good friend.
Emma?
Many expected another slasher set on a farm or maybe some sort of villainous or chaotic origin story. Instead, what we find is a character that's less cold-hearted and ruthless than we may have initially thought.
Yeah.
Someone deserving his sympathy.
I'll be quiet.
as
I'll
she
be
tries
quiet. He's
fix
trying to
her
explain.
fatal mistakes.
Yeah, you get
Since they're so
understanding
closely
why she was
connected,
crazy
I
in
figured
X.
I may as well share some thoughts on X. I gotta be honest, I wasn't a big fan of X.
Wait, go
First
back.
and foremost, since they're so closely connected, I figure I may as well share some thoughts on X. I gotta be honest, I wasn't a big fan of X. First and foremost, after seeing someone who's so sympathetic and developed in this film, Pearl was regrettably one-dimensional here. For all the tactfulness that I found in Pearl, there were seemingly an equal number of tactless moments in X. Between the edgier characters and strangely graphic scenes of elderly sex, I didn't know what to think. It has its moments. The ending sequence was especially well done,
Yeah.
but I personally felt like it lacked
That was
what I
probably one of the
enjoyed
best
in
scenes in
Pearl.
the movie.
Major character reveals are left for the very end, and much of the cast feels disposable. Although there's only one person left standing at the end of each film, can we really say we got to know the cast of X? Still, it's a decent slasher flick, and it's certainly different. It has more to do with making and
The reason I believe Pearl was one-dimensional in X was because it was a 61 year difference from Pearl and X. And as you could tell when you watch X, she basically gave up on everything. And then when these people showed up in X, it was like her little light of hope that she thought she was going to have. Obviously, she did it in the wrong way. But the reason I believe she was one-dimensional is because there was not much left. Where Pearl, she had different possibilities in her head, different emotions. Like, you know how he explained, but when you're her that age and lost all sense of hope, there's not much left in you. And I think that's why she was one-dimensional. You know, so I can understand why she was like that in X. Now, if she was like that in Pearl, it would have been different. But Pearl kind of explained why she was the way she was in X. Because that's the long, from that ending of Pearl to X, it was 60-something years. Or 60 years, something like that. So to be that dreaded and, you know, what she was at the end of Pearl for that long, I can understand why she was like that in X.
discussing movies, which I really enjoyed. I like its themes of entrepreneurship and really carving something out for yourself. Maybe carving is a poor choice of words. It's pretty brutal in some spots, and I can see now what people expected in Pearl. That same brutality isn't exactly gone, but it's used in a different context. The biggest threat in X was Pearl, who by this point in her life is so disconnected that the violence becomes sudden and meaningless. The biggest threat in Pearl is also Pearl, so having the violence connect more to her inner feelings was a necessary move. Where X focuses on visceral kills and quick sprays of blood splatter, Pearl has so many scenes of rot and decay littered throughout that are used to illustrate a feeling of something eating away at you slowly.
It's an awful feeling like rot, the way it just twists and turns at your insides. I know that aching so well.
If there's anything to say technically about both of these movies, it's that it's peaking a lot. It's like when someone blows out a bad speaker or records the audio way too close to the action.
Man, not my house!
Something that really encapsulates the difference between X and Pearl is their attitudes towards violence. There's an unnecessary cruelty in X, in contrast to the emotional weight in Pearl. In X, much of the violence is glossed over, sudden and sharp. One scene that exemplifies this is when Lorraine tries to escape. She breaks the door and tries to undo the lock until her fingers are mangled. It's not even discussed. They don't linger on the damage, and when she's found later with Maxxine, she doesn't even mention what happened to her fingers. It's a very masculine view of violence. 1 second you're here, and the next, you're gone. Much like Jackson, who's gunned down off-screen in a matter of seconds. Or Wayne, a larger-than-life character who meets his end without a word, skewered by Pearl's hand. This all works in contrast to the very emotionally charged deaths in Pearl. Pearl's mother erupts in a burst of flames, only to suffer for days in the basement until she finally succumbs to her injuries. Mitzi is chased, hacked to pieces, and disposed of, and we bear witness to it all, from the initial blow to the cleanup process. That's not even including the one murder that Pearl actually regrets, her father. All these executions have emotional weight to them and are tied to Pearl's emotions, whether they be rage, jealousy, or sorrow. With this in mind, It really shows how much Mia Goth's involvement in the writing of Pearl helped it to take on a different tone than X. I know this isn't completely verifiable, but I would personally consider X to be a film by Ty West and Pearl to be a film by Mia Goth.
To an extent, whenever you receive a script, I find you have to do a little bit of rewrite here and there with a script. But this was the first time that I've actually had the opportunity to create this world and this character Pearl from its very conception. And you know, I'd never written in such a formal format like this before, and so Ty in many ways guided me along, and he would email me or we would FaceTime, and he would tell me, okay, so we're at this part of the story and we're in need of such and such information. And you know, I tried to write it in the typical format, but that was quite difficult, and I struggled somewhat with the structure of it. And so eventually he just told me to, you know, just put a timer on for 20 minutes, 45 minutes, and just go. And then we kind of really got into a groove with it, and I found that to be really enjoyable. And then I would send that over to him, and then he would then incorporate that into the script.
We'll never know for sure just how much of the script was crafted from Mia Goth's writings, but at the very least, it's clear that she helped inform what it became. Now, let's talk elevated horror.
You know, I think especially in this day and age, the genre of horror has become such an umbrella term, and so much can exist within that, and it really gives a lot of creative free reign for filmmakers and actors to explore a whole series of themes and characters, and that's one of the things that makes it so interesting.
Any horror that's been released in the past several years has a question looming over its head at all times. Is this elevated horror? A24 especially has been releasing genre films that stray outside the traditional mold that horror films find themselves in.
And that's one thing. Shout out to A24. I definitely gotta give them their credit. The way they've taken risks with a lot of movies. Some for the profit of them, some not. You know, some for the benefit of them, and some not. You gotta give credit to a company that's willing to take that risk, because it's art. And then, like, A24 is a very artistic style company, in my opinion. As in, what I mean by that is they take movies that are not common and that others will, and a lot of people in Hollywood will look at as weird. But if you look at it, it's like a person. I love going to art galleries. It's something I love to do. I'll sit there for hours. But a lot of artwork is unusual, but that makes it majestic sometimes. And a lot of times, actually. And what I believe A24 does is see it that way as well, where something that for the for the people that I don't want to say the common, or the how should I say it? For the normal eyes, it looks weird. But for somebody else who has a broader vision of something, they like, ooh, this is a masterpiece. Wow, look at that. So if I do this, and if I make a little turn on, oh wow, look at that. You know, that's how A24, I believe, looks at their craft for the most part. It's not, nothing I've seen from A24 was generic. It was very unique. Whether if it was good or bad, it was very unique. You appreciate the art direction they went with it. And some was like, woo. But then at the same time, you're like, you respect them because it's like it was different. And like I said, it was unique, and A24, I believe that company has an eye for that, and they're willing to take that risk. Honestly, they would not be as popular as they are if they was not that company. If they were just a normal studio who does the same generic kind of projects and not willing to take risks, I don't believe they would have succeeded. I believe what makes them so successful is that they see the majestic style of a lot of these scripts that normal Hollywood wouldn't see. And so shout out to A24. They definitely got my nod. I support as many movies as I can of theirs. And hopefully they stay on that route. I mean, Pearl, so on and so forth. Maxxine, Talk to Me. So, what was that movie with Adam Sandler? It was, it was Adam Sandler played a serious role. I forgot what it was called. But, yeah, so on and so forth. There's so many movies A24 has been behind, and I salute to him, because as a person who likes artistic style and I'm willing to take a risk to watch a movie that's artistic, but it can be over the edge. I respect them for being that company to be that, to take that step for people like me. Because you never know. You'll never know if it'll work if you don't try it. And A24 is willing to try it, and most of their projects have worked. So shout out to them.
Horror fans have begun to call these films elevated horror. Some people hate the term because at first glance it seems dismissive of horror, but I feel it's more of a way to signify an evolution for the genre. It's not a perfect term, but it's something that says these films change the way we think about typical horror films. One of the bigger criticisms against elevated horror is that it describes A24 films exclusively, but you could say it's an idea that's been around for a while. Regardless of how you feel about the term, it's undeniable that horror films are going through a major shift right now.
Yeah.
They're straying further and further away from studio horrors and going in more unexpected directions. Horror is a genre built on surprise.
Which I like. I like both directions. Like, I believe horror can go in so many different directions. Everything doesn't have to be Freddy Krueger coming out of the shadows or Insidious. Some can go into, as what he was showing, like how Midsummer, for example. Midsummer is mostly in the sun, it's broad daylight, but it has that feeling when you watch that movie, and that's horror, And the story behind it, I mean, with this cult was very, or if you watch Witch, or, I mean, it's basic. There is different styles of horror. And I appreciate them all. I'm glad it's not just one dimensional. Somebody chasing you in a corner, creepy monsters and stuff like that. Sometimes just a bad situation you're in. That can be horror. Like that one movie they showed.
The horror films are going through a major shift right now. They're straying further and further away from studio horrors. And going
one. I don't know if you've seen Fresh, but that's horror. And it was no monsters, nothing like that. It's a monster person, as in his mind was crazy. But it was different than you would go see Halloween like they just showed before that. And that's fine. I like the whole, what they call it, elevated horror. That's the first time me hearing it, like that elevated horror. I never knew what to call it. I just called it horror. Because I knew that, in my opinion, that horrors can be wrapped up in different ways. And if you like it or not is your opinion, but yeah,
or unexpected.
Because everybody has their different type of horror that they like.
Surprise.
Barbarian was good.
Know what to expect when they walk to a horror film. So you can really only go up from there. As Goth mentioned earlier, it's an umbrella term. At its heart, Pearl is less about being a horror film and more about branching out into a dramatic character study with the themes of longing, rejection, and abandonment tied within. With that out of the way, it's time to talk about another elephant in the room when it comes to modern horror films.
Fuck the Oscars, Fuck the Oscars! Fuck you!
Horror leads have been snubbed historically, but as we see year after year of great performances, the Academy still overlooks horror films.
Yes.
This year, that unfortunately includes Mia Goth and Pearl. She undoubtedly deserved a nomination at the very least.
No, she deserved an award.
One of the best performances of the year with her monologue. Mia Goth was recently asked about her Oscar snub and how the Academy ignores horror in general. She gave a very candid answer about campaigning and the politics behind Oscar nominations.
I think that it's very political and that it's not entirely based on the quality of a project per se. I think there's a lot going on. There are a lot of cooks in the kitchen when it comes to
a lot of stuff behind the scenes. Yeah, I agree.
And categories that are recognized. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say that either. But I think.
I know what she's saying.
I think a lot of people know that.
Like she's not saying anything wrong or disrespectful to anybody else, but it's true, and it's not just because of her performance. I've seen other performances in movies for years, and I'm like, how did they not even get a nomination? And then you see who wins the award, and I don't. Like I said, I'm not like she's not trying to be disrespectful either, and I'm not. You be like, okay, that was voted over this. Okay, I mean, that person's performance was good, but this was unique or masterful, like all that stuff. Different like that. I ain't gonna front. I haven't seen a performance like the one with Pearl before. And I've seen a lot of movies, but I've never seen anybody act like that. With that ending alone, her whole performance was great, but that ending alone was... What movie was like that, where you seen someone do that? That's the only thing. If you have one, that hey, my bad. I didn't know there was one. But that ending with the credits alone is a nomination at the least, and then the rest of the performance of the movie should have got her the award. But yeah, I know what she's saying. She's not saying anything disrespectful either, but it's true.
I don't
And she ain't the
know.
only one that said it. A lot of people said it. Even those who won awards said it. They was like, yeah, there's, you know, you could tell there's some politics behind it.
Why? I think a shift should take place, really, and if they wanted to, you know, engage with the wider public, I think it would be of benefit, really.
Alexander Skarsgård, however, stays pretty tight-lipped. It's well known that A24 doesn't market their films very well during campaign season, but there's a rumor floating around that they focus all their budget and time into promoting Everything Everywhere All at Once, and well, make it that what you will.
Oh, she won it.
Their films very
That's
well
right.
during
Yeah,
campaign
she did
season.
win it. I'm just gonna say I believe Mia Goth should have won it. I'm not gonna take anything away from her. I'm not at all. I'm not saying that she was a bad actress, nothing like that. She actually is a really good actress, and you know, good for that role. I just believe, if you ask me, this is just my opinion. I'll keep it as my opinion. If you ask me, if you put both of their performances together, Mia Goth was literally here. But that's just my opinion. So,
but there's a rumor
like
floating
he
around
even
that
said, he said, take it as you may.
Of benefit, really.
Alexander Skarsgård, however, stays pretty tight-lipped. It's well
Yeah,
known
it's like
that
he didn't want to
A24
say
doesn't market
nothing.
their films very well during campaign season, but there's a rumor floating around that they focus all their budget and time into promoting Everything Everywhere All at Once, and well, make it that what you will. Focusing on the future and Maxxine for a second, Ty West has already said in interviews that it's going to be a really different movie from X and Pearl, so that's something to keep in mind before watching it. It's most likely going to take more time than Pearl did, but to be fair, they worked really hard to put this out the same year as X. Still, with all the recent remakes and revivals of decades-old horror series, it's really interesting to see a new horror franchise spring up so quickly, though it may stray further away from its horror roots. Maybe we'll finally see Goth get some recognition for what will hopefully be another incredible performance. Before I sign off, I just wanted to say thank you to the over 100 people who subscribed recently.
Alright, make sure I like the video. I like the breakdown a lot. You saw I didn't talk as much as I usually would because, you know, I can talk. But, yeah, I mean, I think he broke it down pretty well. Some things I didn't even notice myself. But, yeah, shout out to Mia Goth. She's a good sport about everything, and that's a talent. She's a great talent. She can act her butt off. And so one day she's going to get her respect. I believe that. One day she's going to get her respect and all that stuff. And what performance that will be, who knows? And I'm looking forward to see what Maxxine has to offer, especially since they said it's going a different route than X and Pearl, which is not, I can see that because X and Pearl was different from each other. Same world, obviously, but different kind of movie, which he explained. So I can see Maxxine doing that as well. And yeah, who knows? Maybe Mia Goth will get an award for that. Oh, I heard she's playing a villain in the new Blade movie, you know, Marvel's Blade. So that should be interesting. But anyway, thank y'all so much for tuning in. Again, shout out to Zudo's show. Definitely check the channel out. But thank y'all so much for tuning in. I'll check y'all later.